Many of you know this, but for those of you who don't, I'm Pastor Dustin Lenz, and I'm from down in North Carolina. That's where my wife and mine's family is all located. And so I don't get to see my brother and his children all that often. And in this past summer, Patricia and I took a trip down to the mountains of North Carolina where we met up with her family, which had gotten a cabin on Lake Fontana, and my brother who brought his trailer up and stayed at a campsite nearby. So it was Patricia's family, my wife's family, and my family were all there and just had a great time. But what was probably one of the most impressive feats for me was seeing my brother interact with his children, because I don't get to see that side of him all that often. And what I got to observe was how good and patient of a father he actually is. And so it's fun to watch him. And so I'll get to that, the instance in just a moment. We were one of the things that we would do is we would go out on a boat around the lake and just kind of see things. And one area, this lake is one of those lakes that's been dammed up, and so it's very cliffy into the water in a lot of places. And so there's places where you can find some cliffs and just jump into the water, and it's deep below. You know, it's safe in the sense that you're not going to hit bottom, pretty much. Not necessarily always safe in the fact that it's the safest thing to do. But anyway, so my brother, so we're at one of these cliffs, and we're all starting to climb up to the ledge and to jump off, and even us adults are kind of like, okay, we release ourselves and we jump in. Well, my niece Ivy Jane gets up to the edge. She's finally figured out, yes, I'm going to do this, and she's garnered the courage and the willpower to climb up to the ledge and just stand there about 10, 15 feet off of the water's, the surface of the water. And she's looking, she's, you know how it goes, right? Just stand there and go. Meanwhile, my little nephew Vance starts climbing up. She looks, Ivy, you going? She's like, no. He just throws himself in. And then, you know, about 5 minutes later, he's back up top. Ivy, you gonna go yet? And he just throws himself in. It was so funny because he's a little younger than her, and so it's just fun watching him. He had no qualms about it whatsoever, no fear at all. But Ivy just stood there at the edge, just wanting to jump in, ready to make that plunge, but something inside her was holding her back. When I started to watch my brother, he climbed up to that ledge and showed her exactly how to jump off. He said, all right, just do it like this. And he jumped, climbed back up, hold your hand, and that didn't work, and we're all on the boat ready to kind of go, but wanting to be supportive of Ivy in her work, in her jumping off, and so we're just sitting there watching and encouraging, and my brother was just being so patient and kind and encouraging to her. It was interesting and fun to watch from that aspect. And we all sat there wondering, would she walk back down to the water and listen to those voices in her head that were just telling her no? Or despite those voices in her head, or all those fears and anxieties that she had, would she decide eventually to jump in, to make that plunge, to take that splash? Eventually she jumped and was proud of herself, and we were all proud and glad. We would have been just as happy for her just getting to that ledge too. Now, we probably all had some of those moments where we stood at that ledge, or had those moments where decisions where that voice inside of us tells us no, or quiet, or stop doing that. Or you're making an unnecessary scene. Sometimes it's wise to listen to those voices, right? I mean, it's not a bad thing. They're there for a reason. But other times, we need to jump. We need to make that splash. Making a splash is exactly what Bartimaeus was doing that day in our gospel lesson. He has a choice to make. Will he jump and make a splash, or will he remain quiet and sitting on the side of the boat? Will he listen to those voices telling him to be quiet? Or will he become bold and speak out all the more to profess his faith in Jesus Christ? Well, Bartimaeus, listen to the internal voices of fear, that he will make a scene, that his faith is not strong enough, that he has tried this before. Well, when I tried it before, it didn't work, so I'm not going to try it now. I mean, it's probably been more often true for many of us than just Bartimaeus. That voice that says, oh, we tried it once and it didn't work, so. Oh, but Bartimaeus risked it all and asked Jesus to bring him healing. As we know, Bartimaeus decided to be bold, to not listen to the irrational voices both within himself and from his peers, and that's called peer pressure, by the way. But Bartimaeus decides to call upon Jesus. Through years of learning and listening, he had come to hear about the promises of God and saw these promises fulfilled in Jesus Christ. Now Bartimaeus had faith in Jesus Christ, who came to heal and save the world. And someone that needs to proclaim this out loud, because no one has done yet to do that. Especially in Mark's Gospel, this is the only place where Jesus is called the Son of David, which essentially means that this is God's Son. And so Bartimaeus declares this clearly, faithfully, openly, and without fear. And guess what? He makes the splash. And Jesus responds. So often when the opportunity comes to do something great, we have all of these competing voices going on all around us. We have the voice of fear in our heads, sometimes rational, and sometimes not. We need those intuitions to help us out sometimes. At other times, fear and anxiety can be a detriment, paralyzing us from experiencing something new. We're pushing us to reach beyond our potential. We're sharing our faith with others, even if it's in subtle ways. Those other voices that we often give credence to are those voices of our peers who tell us to quiet down, you're about to make a scene and embarrass me. Don't do that. It's awkward or it's weird. It's the voice that challenges us to get in line with what everyone else is doing. And when we simply get in line, we risk putting on our blinders, not allowing us to experience or say the full scope of what we want to do, or live out our faith the way we have been called to do in our baptisms. So take, for instance, the story of blind Bartimaeus. He could have sat at the roadside and been quiet, and he could have listened to what others had told him to do. And if he had lived into those fears, listened to his peers, listened to those fears, he would have gotten nowhere. He would have finished out his days sitting by the side of the road, hoping that others would provide for his needs. And we learn from Bartimaeus to be bold, though. To be brave in the face of adversity, and above all, to be bold in proclaiming our faith. When we jump into our baptismal callings, we make a splash. Unleashed without worry about what others might think or say or do to us. And this is not an easy task. It can mean being bold and putting ourselves out there. And this boldness isn't something that is just out there, but this boldness is something to one of the characteristics to the core of who we are as Lutherans. Being bold is in our blood as Lutherans. And today is Reformation Sunday, which is why we wear red. I guess I'm all in black. But our confirmands all have a red stole. We have red paraments on the altars. It's Reformation Sunday. And we remember that 501 years ago, Martin Luther looked at the direction of the church, looked at where it was headed, and was bold and spoke up with the 95 Theses, basically stating some of the practices that are going on need to change. And when he was questioned about his writings, he looked at his writings and looked at scriptures and said, I can't take these back, because the scripture and his faith did not allow him to. And from then on, he faced death in very real ways. There was a bounty on his head. But what's interesting is that this didn't quell his voice. His voice became all the more vociferous. as he wrote more, and made faith more accessible to the people, the peasants, and the ones who the church was excluding from following or being a disciple. And Luther's willingness to speak up in the face of adversity, even when his peers said, "Hush, they're coming after you, dude," has changed the face of Christianity and the course of world history, making our faith more accessible for people like Bartimaeus and for people like you and me to follow. Today, Living Waters has 8 youth who are going to declare their faith publicly, to tell the world what it is that they believe. They're going to stand with us and share how God has been active in their lives. And for those youth, and for all of you for that matter, I want to challenge you. There are going to be those times when that conversation around faith comes up with a friend or a family member, and an issue is going to come up. Maybe it's a moral dilemma where your faith directs you to do otherwise. Maybe it's a direct conversation about faith. I want to challenge you not to shy away from those conversations, to take them on, to listen to what the other person might think or what they say, to jump in with both feet like Bartimaeus did, and speak all the more loudly about your faith and what God has, is, and will be doing in your life. And continue to follow Jesus along the way, knowing where you're going and how your faith is guiding and directing you. Not in those moments to be argumentative, but to come at it from a place of love and care for the other person. Listening and sharing from the heart. Not trying to get them to change their opinions, ideas, or change the team that they're on, or their health beliefs, but to share with them what God has done in your life. Afterwards, look back and be proud of yourself for taking the plunge. As it might just be what someone else needs to see and or hear in order to jump in and make a splash on their own path to following Jesus Christ. Amen.